Welcome to the Criminal's Profile. Number 1. Wayne Couzens. On the evening of March 3, 2021, Sarah Everard vanished while making her way home through South London. At around 9:00 p.m, the 33-year-old marketing executive left a friend's house in Clapham, setting out on foot toward her Brixton Hill residence. Along the way, she called her boyfriend, speaking with him for roughly 15 minutes. During their conversation, they made plans to meet the following day. As Sarah walked along the A205 South Circular Road and across Clapham Common, CCTV footage captured her movements, providing the last public record of her journey. A few minutes later, Sarah encountered 49-year-old Wayne Couzens, a former officer with the Metropolitan Police. Though off-duty that evening, Couzens was driving a rental vehicle he had acquired days earlier. After stopping Sarah, he produced his police warrant card, presenting himself in an official capacity. Reports suggest that he may have claimed she was being arrested for breaching COVID-19 restrictions. CCTV footage captured Couzens handcuffing Sarah, placing her into the vehicle and driving away from the scene. Later that night, cameras traced his route toward Kent. Couzens eventually transferred Sarah into his personal vehicle and continued the journey. Around midnight, in a secluded area near Dover, Couzens sexually assaulted and murdered Sarah, using his police-issued duty belt as a weapon. Shortly after the attack, he was seen purchasing refreshments at a petrol station in Dover. He then drove to Hodess Wood, where he owned private land. It was there that he concealed Sarah's body before returning to Dover, where he switched vehicles once again, abandoning the rental car. In the hours that followed, Couzens took steps to eliminate evidence. He disposed of Sarah's mobile phone and other personal items, leaving little immediate trace of her whereabouts. Meanwhile, Sarah's boyfriend grew increasingly worried after she failed to respond to his messages. When attempts to contact her went unanswered, he reported her missing to local authorities, sparking a widespread search effort. Over the next few days, Couzens continued his attempts to cover his tracks. He told senior officers that he was under stress and would no longer be able to carry his firearm, attempting to distance himself from his policing duties. He then purchased petrol and 2 large builder's bags before returning to his private land. There, he set Sarah's body alight. Once the fire burned out, he placed the remains into one of the bags for disposal. The following day, Couzens reported himself ill, officially resigning his police duties and turning in his issued equipment, including his duty belt and handcuffs. Sarah's disappearance prompted widespread public concern, dominating news cycles and igniting massive investigative efforts. After several days of intensive searching, her remains were found in a wooded area near Ashford, Kent, not far from Couzens's private property. As the investigation tightened around him, Couzens was arrested. Initially, he denied any knowledge of Sarah Everard. However, under questioning, he fabricated a story, claiming he had been coerced by a gang to deliver a girl after failing to pay for prior sexual services. Investigators quickly dismantled his account. There was no evidence to support the existence of any gang involvement, and inconsistencies riddled his version of events. Further inquiries revealed troubling patterns in Couzens's past. An investigation led by Lady Elish Angiolini found that Couzens had a history of indecent exposure incidents that were inadequately investigated by authorities. Disturbingly, he had been reported for exposing himself just days before Sarah's murder, a missed opportunity that might have prevented the tragedy. On September 30th, 2021, after trial proceedings concluded, Wayne Couzens was sentenced to a whole life term for the kidnapping, assault, and murder of Sarah Everard. This sentence means he will never be eligible for parole, spending the remainder of his life behind bars. The judge, in delivering the sentence, condemned Couzens's abuse of his police authority, describing his actions as devastating, brutal, and motivated by selfish sexual gratification, not external coercion nor mental illness, but a deliberate choice. Additionally, Couzens later faced sentencing for 3 separate incidents of indecent exposure committed prior to Sarah's death, resulting in a further 19 months of prison time to be served concurrently with his life sentence. As of now, Wayne Couzens remains incarcerated at HMP Frankland, a maximum security prison located in County Durham, England, with no possibility of release. Number 2. Micheal Valva. In the early hours of January 17, 2020, a frantic 911 call came from a quiet home in Centre Mauricas, Long Island. On the line was 45-year-old Micheal Valva, a former NYPD officer, reporting that his 8-year-old son, Thomas, had suffered a fall on his way to the school bus. He claimed the boy had struck his head, lost consciousness, and that he was performing CPR, desperately trying to revive him. Emergency responders rushed to the scene, but what they found painted a far more chilling reality. Thomas lay unresponsive, his small body ice cold to the touch. His body temperature was recorded at just 76.1 degrees Fahrenheit, a level of hypothermia rarely seen outside fatal winter exposures. Despite all efforts to save him, Thomas was pronounced dead shortly after arriving at the hospital. Micheal Valva lived in that home with his fiancée, Angela Polina, and 6 children, his 3 sons and her 3 daughters. To neighbors and outsiders, it may have seemed like an ordinary blended family, but hidden behind closed doors, a horrifying story of prolonged abuse was unfolding, one that came to light after Thomas's death. As investigators dug deeper, surveillance footage from inside the home revealed what words alone could barely convey. Thomas and his older brother Anthony, both diagnosed with autism, were routinely subjected to cruel treatment. They were banished to sleep in the unheated garage. No beds, no blankets, no access to a bathroom. Just cold, bare cement beneath them as temperatures outside plunged well below freezing. On the night before Thomas's death, winter had gripped Long Island with brutal force. Overnight, lows dipped below freezing. Inside the garage, Thomas and Anthony fought to stay warm in the darkness, their breath misting the air. No food, no comfort, no protection. In the morning, after spending hours in the freezing cold, Thomas, disoriented and suffering, soiled his pants. Video footage captured Micheal Valva discovering the accident, screaming furiously at the boy. Without mercy, he forced Thomas outside and sprayed him down with cold water from a hose. Moments later, Thomas collapsed onto the ground, his body succumbing to the hypothermia that had been silently setting in all night. Instead of calling for help immediately, Valva delayed for over an hour. Critical time that could have saved Thomas, slipped away. The abuse did not start that day. Teachers reported that Thomas and Anthony frequently arrived at school cold, filthy, and starving. They scavenged for food from garbage bins and begged classmates for scraps. Their hands were often red and swollen from exposure to the cold. Their clothes, soaked with urine, were a silent testimony to their suffering. Despite these visible signs, systemic failures allowed the abuse to continue unchecked until it claimed Thomas's life. When the truth finally surfaced, it shocked the everybody. Micheal was arrested and charged with second-degree murder and multiple counts of endangering the welfare of a child. His fiancée, Angela Polina, faced similar charges. Throughout the trial, Valva's defense attorneys pointed to his background in law enforcement, framing him as a stressed father overwhelmed by circumstances. But prosecutors brought the evidence into sharp focus: the years of neglect, the video footage, the teachers' testimonies, and ultimately, Thomas's death. Not from a single moment of anger, but from a pattern of deliberate cruelty. In December 2022, the verdict came down. Micheal Valva was convicted on all counts and sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. Angela Polina received the same sentence. The Suffolk County District Attorney later described their actions as nothing short of pure evil. Today, Micheal Valva remains incarcerated in a New York State correctional facility. His earliest eligibility for parole will not come until 2047, when he will be 68 years old. But for Thomas, a young boy who endured so much suffering in his short life, justice, however imperfect, finally arrived. Number 3. Derek Chauvin. It was 25th 2020. a bystander's cell phone captured a harrowing scene unfolding on the streets of Minneapolis. A white police officer was seen kneeling on the neck of George Floyd, a 46-year-old black man, as Floyd pleaded for his life. For over 9 minutes, Floyd cried out that he could not breathe, his words becoming weaker until they stopped altogether. Earlier that day, employees of Cup Foods, a convenience store in Minneapolis, had contacted authorities, suspecting that George Floyd had used a counterfeit $20 bill during a purchase. Among the officers dispatched to the scene was 45-year-old Derek Chauvin, a veteran of the Minneapolis Police Department with more than 19 years of service. Throughout his career, Chauvin had accumulated over 18 serious complaints regarding his conduct as a police officer. Upon arrival, officers located Floyd seated inside a nearby vehicle. They confronted him, forcibly removing him from the car. CCTV footage later reviewed showed that Floyd did not actively resist arrest. Chauvin, taking the lead during the encounter, pressed his knee into Floyd's neck after handcuffing him and forcing him to the ground. 2 other officers restrained Floyd's body, while a 4th officer stood between them and concerned bystanders, preventing any attempts to intervene. Throughout the restraint, Floyd repeatedly cried out that he couldn't breathe. He begged for air. He called out for his mother in desperation. Bystanders shouted at the officers to release him, but their protests went unanswered. Chauvin maintained pressure on Floyd's neck until paramedics arrived. By then, George Floyd had lost consciousness. The medical examiner later concluded that George Floyd died from cardiopulmonary arrest caused by prolonged asphyxiation. The video, shared widely across social media platforms, ignited global outrage and protests against police brutality. Derek Chauvin was arrested within days of the incident. In April 2021, after a highly publicized trial, Chauvin was found guilty on multiple counts: second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. Later, he pleaded guilty to separate federal charges related to violating George Floyd's civil rights. In June 2021, Judge Peter Cahill sentenced Chauvin to 22.5 years in prison for his actions during Floyd's death, citing the officer's blatant abuse of power and the cruelty inflicted upon Floyd. Additionally, during federal investigations, Chauvin admitted to another incident, a 2017 case where he used excessive force on a 14-year-old boy during an arrest. In July 2022, Chauvin received an additional sentence of 21 years in federal prison for violating civil rights, to be served concurrently with his state sentence. After sentencing, Chauvin was transferred to a federal correctional facility in Tucson, Arizona. However, his time there would not be without further violence. Months after arriving, Chauvin was attacked and stabbed 22 times by fellow inmate John Tucker, a former member of the Mexican mafia gang. According to federal authorities, Tucker had planned the attack for months, intending to carry it out on Black Friday as a symbolic act connected to the Black Lives Matter movement. He later told FBI agents that, if not for the rapid response of correctional staff, he would have attempted to kill Chauvin during the assault. Following the attack, Chauvin was moved for his safety to a low-security federal prison in Big Spring, Texas, where he remains under protection. As of now, 2025, Derek Chauvin has served nearly 4 years of his combined sentences. Given the concurrent nature of his state and federal terms, he is projected to be released in 2037 when he will be 61 years old. Separate from the criminal proceedings, George Floyd's family filed a civil wrongful death lawsuit against the city of Minneapolis. In 2021, the city agreed to a $27 million settlement, one of the largest of its kind, in resolution of the case. Number 4. Daniel Holtzclaw. In the early morning hours of June 18, 2014, 57-year-old Jani Ligens was on her way home in northeast Oklahoma. As she drove through the quiet streets, she was pulled over by 39-year-old officer Daniel Holtzclaw, a patrolman with the Oklahoma City Police Department. Holtzclaw had just finished his shift but remained behind the wheel of his marked police cruiser. When he initiated the stop, Holtzclaw logged off the patrol car's computer system and deliberately failed to alert dispatch, ensuring that no official record would exist of the encounter. It was not a random stop. He had been lurking in this area, targeting vulnerable women, individuals he believed would be unlikely to come forward. During the stop, Holtzclaw questioned Janny repeatedly, weaving through a series of interrogations. Then, under the guise of authority, he ordered her to lower her underwear and forced her to engage in an act of oral sodomy in the back seat of his vehicle. Janny, terrified, pleaded with him to stop, but her protests were ignored. Throughout the assault, she tried to avoid looking directly at his badge, fearing that if she identified him, he might kill her. After the horrifying encounter, Janny summoned the courage to go to the police station and file a formal report. The following day, when Holtzclaw reported for duty, he was quietly brought in for questioning by two detectives, Kim Davis and Rocky Gregory. He denied all accusations, feigning complete ignorance. Detectives collected DNA swabs and stripped him of his badge, uniform, and police-issued equipment. Placed on paid administrative leave, Holtzclaw was allowed to walk free, at least for the moment, as there was no immediate physical evidence tying him to the crime. With investigators digging deeper, they unearthed a disturbing pattern. Reports against Holtzclaw began to surface. 16 separate allegations of misconduct and assault, including one eerily similar to Janny's case, previously ignored by authorities. In that earlier incident, Holtzclaw had isolated another woman and forced her into a similar act under threat of arrest. Detectives contacted the second victim, who provided detailed testimony that closely matched Janny's experience. With corroboration in hand, their investigation widened. Ultimately, over 13 women came forward, each recounting similar abuse at the hands of Holtzclaw. Their stories, though varying in specifics, all pointed to a chilling pattern, an officer exploiting his power over those most vulnerable. On August 21st, 2014, just weeks after Janny Ligens's courageous report, Daniel Holtzclaw was arrested and charged with multiple counts of assault and battery. Born in Guam, Holtzclaw had joined the Oklahoma City Police Department and was assigned to patrol the northeast sector of the city, a predominantly African-American community. Between December 2013 and June 2014, he used his badge as a shield, preying on women who had prior criminal histories or struggles with substance use, those he believed society would not listen to. Holtzclaw's methods were calculated. He would run background checks to identify women who matched his profile, women whose credibility could easily be questioned. Under the guise of routine stops, he would threaten arrest, remind them of their criminal records, and coerce them into acts of sexual submission. His victims ranged widely in age, from a teenage girl of 17 to women in their late 50s. In December 2015, following a month-long trial, Holtzclaw was convicted on 18 of the 36 charges brought against him. These included 4 counts of first-degree assault and forcible oral sodomy. During the proceedings, one victim testified how Holtzclaw forced himself on her while she was handcuffed to a hospital bed, arrested for substance abuse. Fearing that no one would believe her, believing that officers would protect their own, she initially remained silent. The jury saw through Holtzclaw's facade, recommending a staggering sentence totaling 263 years. On January 21st, 2016, the court imposed that full sentence, effectively ensuring that Daniel Holtzclaw would spend the remainder of his life behind bars. Since his conviction, Holtzclaw's family has continued to proclaim his innocence, pursuing a series of appeals. However, in 2019, the Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals upheld his convictions, rejecting arguments of prosecutorial misconduct and insufficient evidence. Further appeals at the federal level are pending, a process that could stretch on for years, though his chances of release remain exceedingly slim. As of now, Daniel Holtzclaw has served approximately 9 years of his sentence. He is currently housed at the Lexington Assessment and Reception Center in Oklahoma, his future confined to prison walls, where justice, at least for his victims, has been served. Number 5. David Carrick. For nearly 2 decades, David Carrick, a serving officer in London's Metropolitan Police, lived a double life, upholding the law by day while committing heinous crimes in private. By the time of his arrest, the 48-year-old had earned a dark reputation as a serial predator, responsible for at least 85 serious offences, including 48 separate assaults against women. Carrick carried out most of his attacks at his home in Hertfordshire, exploiting his role as a trusted officer to silence and manipulate his victims. All of his crimes took place while he was still employed by the police. Carrick joined the Metropolitan Police in 2001 and was later assigned to the Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Command, a prestigious unit tasked with guarding government buildings and high-profile individuals. Yet behind the uniform, he was systematically abusing women, and the system meant to stop men like him failed repeatedly. Between 2003 and 2020, Carrick's offences continued unabated. He frequently met victims through dating apps, presenting himself as a dependable officer who could be trusted. Once a relationship was established, the abuse began. Victims described harrowing experiences of being falsely imprisoned, whipped with belts, forced into degrading acts, and in some cases, held at gunpoint. Several women were confined inside a cupboard under the stairs. Carrick controlled every aspect of their lives, from what they wore and ate to who they could speak with, subjecting them to relentless psychological and physical torment. Throughout this period, there were numerous warning signs. Carrick came to the attention of police authorities over 9 separate incidents between 2000 and 2022. Complaints and allegations were either dismissed or poorly handled, allowing him to remain in his position of authority. One particularly notable failure occurred in 2016 when a serious complaint was mishandled and Carrick was cleared through a re-vetting process. Rather than facing consequences, he grew even more emboldened. The breakthrough finally came in 2021 when a woman reported him for assault. His arrest triggered a full investigation, revealing the vast extent of his crimes and how long he had operated without accountability. As investigations unfolded, over 12 women came forward to testify against him, detailing years of abuse and terror at his hands. In February 2023, David Carrick pleaded guilty to 49 charges relating to sexual violence and coercive control involving 12 victims. The court sentenced him to 36 life sentences, with a minimum term of 30 years before any possibility of parole. Throughout the trial, Carrick showed little to no emotion. The judge emphasized Carrick's complete lack of remorse and the profound, lasting damage he inflicted on the lives of his victims. He called Carrick's abuse of his policing authority one of the worst betrayals of public trust imaginable. As of now, David Carrick has served approximately 2 years of his prison term. Under the terms of his sentence, he will not be eligible for parole until 2053, at which point he would be 76 years old. For his victims, and for a nation shaken by revelations of unchecked abuse within its own police force, his imprisonment stands as both a reckoning and a grim reminder of the failures that allowed his crimes to persist for so long. Hit that notification bell and make sure to subscribe so you won't miss our next episode. Thanks for watching.